So what do you think? Pretty incredible, right? 15, 13, 20, 19, 14. It's what these kids are capable of is absolutely mind-boggling. I read an article in Popular Mechanics magazine in the United States. The generation born after 1997, and Blanca, you referred to this. So these are kids that have pretty much lived their whole life in the presence of smartphones. They have never used a map, a paper map. They've never used a paper dictionary. They've never seen their parents use a paper map. Okay, so before we outsource all the responsibility, right? And if you think about it, when they were born in 1997, that's when Wi-Fi was invented. And Wi-Fi now is everywhere, and the fact that Wi-Fi is available and these technologies are available has really redefined the way we interact with one another. There's a guy by the name of Peter Diamandis. Jörg, I don't know if you remember him. He's from Singularity University, and he wrote a book called Abundance. And in this book, he talks about future technologies, and he talks about his Thanksgiving dinner Thursday night, where at the Thanksgiving dinner, he had his smartphone, he had a robot called Beam, he had FaceTime. He was in California, his niece was in London, and his other niece was in Budapest. And he says the big difference is today he can now, through smartphones and technology, connect with people he wants to be with in that given moment. He says go back to the early 60s or early 70s, and you may have not had any technology, and you were locked in a room with your uncle, who probably had a little bit too much to drink. Everybody has an uncle, I think, I'm convinced, that drinks too much. And just because you're locked in that room with that uncle doesn't mean that that uncle is the person you want to be communicating with. And so what we see today is technology taking off that restriction from who you connect with. Now, being next to a person who's busy on their smartphone is a subtle way of telling you that that person on the other end just might be a little more interesting than we are. And that, of course, is offensive and hurts our feelings. But the fact is that the power for us to be able to reach out and communicate today is magnificent. 10 years from now, it'll be interesting if we can hold a similar event. So we heard a lot of speeches tonight about Z generation and technology, but in 2025, virtual reality will be every day. And the question we have to ask ourselves today is, where will these kids and where will their kids be when virtual reality basically takes over from simply just inputting data with your finger? So what's going to happen in the next 10 years is going to clearly redefine the direction that technology moves and how we move our relationships. And why I find it so valuable to spend time with children who are obviously as old as my children are, is because you learn from them and you find out what's on their mind and how they relate to this technology. And it's sort of soothing, so it could be easy. You could get offended really easy and say, well, gee, that's something wrong, that what you're doing. You're spending, Ricky, where are you? You said kids have all been told by their parents they spend too much time on technology. I think that's a true statement. But it's not going to change. And what I find is that when people learn and adults start to learn, they start to spend a lot of time on technology. I know a lot of people 80 and 85 years old who are today on the internet, sending emails, looking at things, maybe not big on Facebook yet. Somehow 85 is just not the age you want to get started on Facebook. I mean, it may be, but you just don't have a lot of people that you can friend. Right? I mean, it's just a reality, right? So I would invite everybody back in a few years when we continue to hold classes like this and you see the 15-year-olds of 2020 or the 15-year-olds of 2025. And let's see where they are. It'll be interesting to hold this memory and then compare it and see, did things get better? Did they get worse? Obviously, when we think they're bad, we'd feel really uncomfortable because we think they're going in the wrong direction. But many of you have seen the picture where 20 and 25 years ago, people would ride in a train and they'd be holding up a newspaper. Today we hold up a smartphone. But they weren't talking to each other back then either. And we're not talking to each other, at least certainly not the one sitting next to us. And that may be good, may not be good. I don't know. But it's exciting time to be alive, and it's exciting to be able to take this information from the brains of these kids who are going to change our future, right? We need to be nice to them because they're going to be providing the money for our retirement. right? And they'll be running the hospitals, right, Laszlo? They'll be running the hospitals that'll be taking care of us. But these kids are really smart. And I don't think it's just Hungary. I'm sure if we were in Poland or we're somewhere else right now, we'd feel just as charged or excited about the talent that's coming up behind us. But I invite any of you who have a feeling that you would like to help today's youth. I mean, this is one of the areas, you don't have to do public speaking, but anything you can do to help them create their confidence. Because where I feel good about, these kids all have incredible confidence. If you saw them, like I said earlier, the day they first got here and where they are now, it's this kind of confidence that they can take forward and make mature decisions. Ricky said balance, right? It's really obvious. It's balance. Blanca said that our parents need a little extra time to figure this stuff out. And Blanca, that's a very true statement. But it's this maturity that will dictate how they let technology run their lives or how their lives will run technology. And I think anything we can do today in 2015 to add to the maturity and to the confidence of these kids only ensures that they'll make the right decision when given the opportunity to make that decision. I take this very seriously. I think it's a huge responsibility. You talked about that, David, right? About responsibility on whether you live forever in somebody else's life or not. And I'm just excited that we can all have this opportunity to share together as these kids come up here and have an incredible view, right? So can you imagine being 14 on this stage, seeing the castle? The big question is, like Edith's son, he gave his first speech in a 5-star hotel. I don't mention any of your competition, Rick. And then his next speech was in the parliament. And then he turned to Edith and said, where do I go from here? And he's 18, right? So great opportunities. Just because we didn't have them doesn't mean the others shouldn't. I'm excited that I get this opportunity to work with so many wonderful kids. And I invite anybody who's got somebody of this age that you would like to see grab a hold of this kind of self-confidence, let me know, let us know. We're more than happy to work with them. I want to thank everybody for allowing their children to partake in this class. For those of you who are not familiar with the parameters, we met on Sunday afternoons from 4 to 6. The reason we met on Sundays is because if you have 11 teenagers in a room, there is simply no other time slot on the calendar that works for 11 kids, except Sunday afternoon. And what's remarkable is most Sundays, at least 10 of the 11 kids were here. And there were several Sundays when all 11 were here. And this is not mandatory. Their school's not giving them credit for it. But I think life will give them credit for it. And I think they made the right decisions. They made the right decisions. And I also applaud the parents for having made the decision to allow their kids to do this. Congratulations once again to everyone. And now what I'd like to do is invite the speakers up here, and then we'll hand them a certificate and have a final group photo. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Steffi?